Alright, Gamer Bears, it is time for another unused content video, and today we have unused content for Pokémon Sword and Shield. So, we'll be going over the unused content in this game, and before we begin, I'd like to ask those of you to subscribe and leave a comment if you happen to enjoy this video somewhere down the line. So, without further ado, let us begin. Pokemon Sword and Shield are the first entries in the series' 8th generation, taking place in a UK-inspired region of Galar. We already know all that, so why don't we skip that a little bit. First things first, I want to look at the prototype information of the game, and there are 3 different builds. The December 22nd, 2017 build, the March 26th, 2018 build, and the May 25th, 2018 build. Now, do y'all want to hear something that's funny? All these dates, these all predate when Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee were announced, saying that this game was indeed in development during that game, before that game was even announced. Anyways, let's look at this one first. Alright, so here are some prototype title screens, and here's the final one you see over here. Now, I'm going to zoom in on this one real fast. I want you all to tell me what you see in this picture. Like, what's kind of wrong with it? Well, this isn't a live recording, so you guys can't exactly tell me that in real time. But in short, notice how some Pokemon that don't appear in the final game, or some that appear in later DLCs like Blastoise over here, are on this title screen showing that they were originally going to be here. You know, you got Greninja, you got Bruxish for some reason, you got Arceus, the man himself, Pidgeot, and Sawsbuck all the way in the background, and I want to say that might look like a Munchlax down there, but that's a little hard to tell, but even though that thing was in base game or whatever, and Moltres back here as well. Now, there's one other Pokemon in this picture that I think is really interesting, that being Mega Rayquaza. You know what's funny about that? This shows that Mega Evolution was originally going to be in the game. So, had this game had some more time in the oven, perhaps we could have seen Mega Evolution, and that would have been awesome alongside Dynamax. That would have been so cool. But anyways, we'll get more into that Mega Evolution stuff later. Here's another prototype artwork of that title screen, which honestly looks better than what we got in the final game. And here's the garbage one in the final game. Yay, riveting. The only logo that's a Japanese logo actually looks pretty cool in my opinion. Here's what it looks like. And here's the final one, we already have that. Alright, here's some other prototype builds. Here's the December 2017 build. Alright, and notice how Furfrou is here, a Pokemon that isn't in the final game and neither of the DLCs either. And notice how the trees, well, some trees do look a little more like their final designs, but other trees, they look like they came straight out of N64 games, showing that they're vastly unfinished. Alright, and here's what they look like in the final game. And here's Tyron, a Pokemon that doesn't show up until the Crown Tundra DLC, and more of those polygonal trees as well as the background elements being very polygonized as well. Alright, here is the Postwick house, the player house. It looks somewhat similar to how it looks in the final game. Here you can kind of see a driveway of some sort, even though I don't know where the hell the car's driving off to, but whatever. Which I don't think that appears in the final game. But otherwise, the rest of this looks kind of similar to what we see in the final game. And here's what it looks like in the final game. As I mentioned before, that little drive-thru isn't exactly here, or at least it's less visible now. Things look a little different, too. Like, there's a bit more foliage on the house as well. Alright, here's a concept art of it. And here's another bit of concept art, which, correct me if I'm wrong, is that Victor down there? It's a little hard to tell. The male protagonist of Sword and Shield, in case you don't know who Victor is. Anyways, almost everything about the player's house is unfinished, including the camera angles, NPC placements, and lightings, particularly on the outside. The textures from a garden shed or garage are also completely missing at this point, but it was entirely removed at the time of the final. This building next to the player's house also appears in various concept arts of the game. Most likely this building is what it's referring to over here. Perhaps that could have originally been Hop and Leon's house? I don't know. Alright, here's an early prototype build of the player's room. Again, looks absolutely awful. Notice how there's a map down here that resembles the one from the Sun and Moon games. And clearly that's a section of, I want to say, Akala Island and Alola? That's my guess just off the top of my head. Been a bit since I played those games, so cut me some slack, please. Alright, here's what it looks like in the final game. And again, most likely, excuse me, these damn things keep showing up on my screen. It's piss annoying, but anyways. This little map over here, most likely a placeholder of this build, since I want to say Sword and Shield might have a similar engine to Sun and Moon's engine. It's not the same, but the art style is decently similar. I do have a small theory, and a lot of people also have a theory about Pokemon Sword and Shield, that this game was originally going to be a 3DS game before being ported over to the Switch. And here's some more early builds of the player's house. It looks like the mother hasn't been designed yet, as you can see in the final version over here. And here's one more photo of it. And notice how the little Rotom map down here is a little different as well. Another different form of, what is it, one of the areas from Alola. I'm drawing a blank for a second, but whatever. Notice how there's a little unpolygonized Nintendo Switch in the background as well. Interesting detail, I guess. Alright, now we get to Hop's house. Notice how in this build, Hop's house is finalized, or at least close to being finalized, compared to the player's house. Funny how they decided to do that for the rival's house before doing that for, you know, the player's house. But whatever. Alright, Hop's house. Even though Hop's house is mostly final on the ground floor, the rooms on the top floor are very much a work in progress. NPCs are also missing at this point, like Hop and Leon's mother. Alright, here's what his house looked like in the bottom floors in the December 2017 build. Here's another room. Heh, I just realized I have a little Teddiursa bag here. Again, another Pokemon that doesn't show up in the final version of Sword and Shield, and neither of the DLCs either. We don't even see Teddiursa on Switch till, like, BDSP, I'm pretty sure. But it would have been a nice little touch. Alright, here's that's not Leon's room, that's their living room or whatever. An early version of that. Alright, here's an unfinished room, as you can see here. This might have been Hop's room, is my guess. Alright, here's what they look like in the final version. And I guess that's Leon and Hop's grandmother is my guess. Alright, here's another early version. Once again, the Rotom map is here. A different part of Alola is shown as a placeholder. Alright, and here's the prototype version of Leon's room. And what it looks like in the final game. And now here's some unused pictures that also were supposed to show up in Leon's room. Most likely, and some of these depict like an early design of Leon as well. Alright, in both versions of the living room there are photographs depicting a younger Leon, but the prototype has a higher amount of a more defined, and far more defined, I can't read, early design that aren't shown in the final version. Alright, here's what some of these look like. Let's get a closer look. Alright, notice this little face over here. This one right here catches my interest in particular. Along with a certain other picture we'll get to in a second. Like, Leon's face definitely looks pretty different here, and his hairstyle's a little different as well. Alright, he's got some roses over here for whatever reason. This looks like one of Leon's old shirts. A medal of some sort he most likely won. And I can't really tell what this is. A pink flower of some sort, some yellow flower in a pot. And this little picture of a woman down here. Who could this be? If anybody has any theories on who that might be, please let me know. Perhaps a lover of some sort for Leon? That he was originally going to have before it was heavily implied that Sonia would be. That would play that role for him, but whatever. And then this mountain picture. And then some other pictures, or frames that don't even have pictures in them. Alright, here's what they look like in the final game. Alright, definitely Leon's more finalized design. Same with and again, that woman with the hat is still here as well. So again, theories on who this might be. And this picture right over here, this shows that maybe Leon went to Crown Tundra at some point. This might have been a precursor to that. And I say that because he has an orange outfit on, assuming that is Leon, or wherever the hell that ends up being. Alright, early version of Stumbling Wheel. There doesn't seem to be any data on that. Same with Route 1, but Wedgehurst. Alright, Wedgehurst lacks practically all of its textures and is just as work in progress as Postwick. None of the buildings here have any functionality, aside from the train station, which has a warp to the wild area. Alright, as with many builds in the game so far, the boutique is largely unfinished, and has a different placement than in the final. Its location in this build would eventually be filled by the Pokemon Center, as you can see here, this generic-looking building. And here's what it looks like, having a little closer look. And again, the Rotom map for Alola still shows up here. Alright, here's what that looks like in the final version. It appears to have this final location was instead planned to hold 3 separate buildings, instead of just 2 in the final version. Here's what they look like. And again, very unfinished, very generic. And keep in mind, Pokemon Sword and Shield comes out only a little less than 2 years by the time this build is made. Just saying. Alright, here's another early version of Inside the Boutique. And again, the Rotom map is showing another part of Alola. I think that's I forgot what it's called. It's been so long since I played that game. The stupid park where the fire trial is supposed to take place. That's what it's called, or whatever. Minus the lack of textures, object placements with the lab is still a lot closer in the final than many other areas in the game. And here's what it looks like. An early version of Professor Magnolia's lab. Alright. And here's an early version of what it looked like inside of there. Very polygonized. Because, you know, most games, especially 3D games, would kind of have this build at least somewhat figured out by now before it being changed in final versions. Here, it's just all fresh-looking pixels. Alright, not only does the Pokemon Center have a different placement next to the lab in this building, or in this build, but further upward in the final. It also largely unfinished on both the inside and outside. Camera angles and a lack of NPCs are differentiates from the final version. I can't read again. Here's what it looks like. And here's what the inside of the Pokemon Center looks like. And again, the road map also looks different. Also, there's another little interesting thing about this picture we'll get to in a second. The trade station still has a lack of warp to the wild area. Despite being largely unfinished, on both the inside and the outside, the camera angles are significantly different from the final version. Here's what it looks like. And now, notice something very interesting up in the top left-hand corner over here. It's a precursor to the little notification you get from other players, but notice how it depicts Defense Mode Deoxys. A Pokemon that isn't in Sword and Shield, and none of its DLCs either. And this isn't the last time we'll see a Pokemon that doesn't exist in this game that shows up in one of these. Just as a little foreshadowing. Well, it's not entirely a foreshadowing, more like a spoiler, but whatever. Alright, here's what the inside of the train station looks like. These look like this train service, and service is spelled wrong, by the way. But, train service, this kind of looks like that one soda machine from Baldi's Basics. Like, I'm the one who sees this is what it looks like. But anyways, entrance... Information? Yes, give me some information. Whoever's gonna give me the information, but whatever. Alright, Route 2. And Wild Area. The huge, spacious Wild Area, has a significantly different layout, and lacks textures when compared to the final. Gee, like most things at this point in the build? Alright, Motostoke Stadium is largely unfinished when compared to the final. Here's what it looks like here. Again, everything completely no textures, barely any color, all of that. And here's what it looks like in the final. Our Motostoke outskirts, and the player model. The player model, known as Gloria, the female protagonist in Sword and Shield, if you didn't know, is the final. Is somewhat similar, but also noticeably different from the final version. Alright, she shares many of her limited battle poses and animations without the main characters from Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, most likely as a placeholder, which again bears reminding that game was still in development and hadn't been announced yet at the time of this build. Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. The text reads, "You are challenged by Shorts Kid Taro." Gloria, the Shorts Kid. Yes. Anyways, youngster Josh in the English version. And here's what it looks like. Kind of do like the pose she's striking though, it's adorable. Alright, the protagonist has a Teddiursa charm, we noticed that earlier, hooked to her back, despite that Pokemon not appearing in the final game nor its evolutions. Just Ursaluna, because Ursaring doesn't exist yet. This implies that the removal of Pokemon had not impacted development at this early stage, showing that initially, we were going to have every Pokemon from Generation 1 to Gen 7 before the Dex cut thing. We all know that controversy, let's not get back into it. It was removed in the following releases, prototype builds, and here's what the charm looked like. A nice little closer look of it. Such a cute little charm. Man, I want it. I want that merchandise now. Alright, and this weird face Gloria's making. Anyways, using the title screen debug menu, what appears to be a test of customization and eye movement can be accessed in Saito and Iris Test. The player model shown here has a hat and a hairstyle from Pokemon Ultra Sun Ultra Moon, most likely as a placeholder, since Gloria does look slightly similar to Celine. Slightly. Neither of which is possible to obtain in the final version of Sword and Shield. The rest of the outfit features clothes that do not seem to be present in the final build at all, like this really long dress-looking thing. At all, with some exceptions to this being very early textures of options that would appear in the final. Interestingly, an early minimal design of Galarian Meowth can be seen on the model's bag. That doesn't seem to be present in the final. On the texture files, an insignia resembling the Pokemon Sinistea can also be seen, which was another Pokemon added in Sword and Shield, yet is not present in this build. Alright, and here's the weird-ass face she's making, which is kind of hilarious. And this little dress here. Kind of dress? I don't know. It kind of reminds me of Sophie from Atelier Sophie with this outfit. Like, it looks very similar to that. Here's what the back of it looks like. And that unfinished design for Galarian Meowth. And her T-posing as well. You know, certain dominance. It's just a thing in games to, you know, make modeling character designs easier, in case you didn't know. And here's what the textures of that shirt would look like, as well as Sinistie's face on the back. Alright, one of these textures, which can be found on both the pink dress as well as the gloves, showcases a distinct P symbol that is not seen anywhere in the final game. It seems to bear resemblance to the symbol seen on Peony's expedition uniform, which was first seen in the Crown Tundra DLC following the game's release, showing that perhaps the DLCs were originally going to be in the base game. Who knew? Alright, here's what that looks like. And this is the symbol we see on Peony's hat, which I always said it looked kind of similar to an Amara or something. Hey, Galarian Amara would have been pretty cool, but whatever, doesn't happen. On textures of both the pink dress as well as the Meowth bag, early icons of the first two gems can be seen. These stickers don't seem to be implemented in the final version. Here's what they look like. Alright, Gloria lacks her special animation of tiptoeing down steps from the final build. Alright, here's what it looks like while she's doing that, without looking at the steps. Have you ever tried going down the stairs without looking at the stairs? Not gonna lie, you do that enough times, you will slip eventually. And that's why you look down where you're going, like this one is. Alright, UI and visuals. The Rotom Dexes, as I mentioned before. The game has a mini-map in every prototype build. Except for the final game, weirdly enough, because there's no mini-map in the final game, which during my Pokemon Sword and Shield Nuzlocke, I did complain about that, which I'm glad Scarlet and Violet fixed. With a design similar to that of the Rotom Dex introduced in Sun and Moon. It functions somewhat properly, only moving in 8 directions, and it moves even if you're running into a wall. But the map it displays is instead of a call island. Hey, look at that, I was right. From the Alola region, meaning that it's obviously does not match up with the gameplay. And here's the icon. And the map of the Alola region's Akala Island. And what it looks like in-game with Gloria's model in the corner for whatever reason. Most likely for test purposes of the map. Alright, a pink Rotom Dex with a bow can also be found in the files. Labeled as dummy_rotoko_00, whatever that symbol is, I forgot, and Q. The associated test screen places it in the upper right-hand corner above the Rotom map. Interestingly, Rotom is notable for being a Pokemon that lacks an assigned gender, despite the feminine appearance of this Rotom in particular. Here's what it looks like. I clicked that like 3 times and it didn't go, but whatever. Sorry, accidentally hit my mic. Alright, menus. Games has a completely different menu to the final. It lacks any functionality and is missing many icons that are present in the final. It also blurs out the back screen slightly, kind of being very similar to Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. Again, a game that hasn't even been announced yet. And here's that in the final version. There's some unused translation. I'm not going to say all this. I'll keep this here for a second for all of you who want to read it. And pause the screen if you want. Alright. And here's some more things. Unused save screens, which again, of Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, a game that had not been announced yet. Shows that they were taking some elements from each other already. Alright, saving. An early save rendition of the save screen can be accessed in Fukushima's report, and uses visuals from Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. It also uses concept art from each of that game's gym leaders, instead of in-game models like in the final game. This predates the save screen that can be seen in those games' prototypes. The data shown also are always August 30th and August 31st of 2017. Funnily enough, dates where Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon hadn't even come out yet, likely meaning that this was the time the menu was made. A trainer rank stat is also present, with an experience bar, to go along with it. Might be a precursor to what Legends Arceus did later on. It's unknown what the stat would have been used for, though. It was removed by February build of Let's Go Pikachu or Let's Go Eevee. Now, Let's Go Pikachu, weirdly enough, whatever. Although the space of them remains. As you can see right over here, and the space is still there. And that, my guess what that experience bar might have been for, just like in Legends Arceus when your little, your guild rank or whatever the fuck it's called, rises up, will allow you to get certain items, and will allow you to catch higher level Pokemon. That's probably what that would have been meant for, my guess, but in the final game, the gym badges still serve those purposes. Alright, here's what it looks like in the final version of Swords and Shields. Let's have a closer look at this. Also, Gloria just staring in the fields, whatever she's staring at. Same with Elaine over here. Alright, and here's prototype builds for the Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee gym leaders, which we'll discuss about that in a future video. Foreshadowing. Alright, here they are in the final versions. Look much better than these little PNGs over here, though they don't look bad either. Alright, symbol chat. I remember that Deoxys I was talking about earlier? Well, here he is right over here. And he's not the only Pokemon that doesn't show up in Sword and Shield that's here. Alright, symbol chat. When in the overworld, crudely drawn emoticons will occasionally appear on screen, likely as a precursor to the Wycom, codenamed as symbol chat. Default player icons that were clearly for Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon are also used as placeholders, given the past sketches as seen in Sun and Moon's concept stages. They appear to be drawn by the game's director, Shigeru Omori. Alright, here are those placeholders for the Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Moon Pro tags. And here are some of those clearly drawn pictures. One for Cyndaquil, a Pokemon that doesn't show up in the final version of the game. Squirtle and Pikachu doing that one Macho Man handshake meme or whatever, which looks cursed as all hell. Here's the funniest one. Clefable, you're offending my viewers. Put down that finger right now. Alright, here's Ditto getting squished by someone. Duskull chasing someone, which I think this one looks pretty cool. I'm not entirely sure what this is supposed to be. Pikamuku giving a thumbs up. Spoink, another Pokemon that doesn't show up in Sword and Shield, being on here, showing that maybe it was originally planned to be in the game. Pikachu looking really happy. Alright, Hoopa, another Pokemon that doesn't show up in Sword and Shield and none of its DLCs, right here, perhaps for the better. Goomy looking sad. The sad Goomy face should be a meme. And finally, the Deoxys from earlier. And here they are, the symbol, and I'll keep it here for a split second in case anyone wants to read it. Here you go. Alright, let us keep going. And here's the ones we see in the final version of the game, which looks way, way better than this garbage. And here's what those would have looked like in game. We already saw that earlier. Alright, some unused themes that I'm not going to play again so I don't get copyright striked. But in short, here's an early gym theme, an early gym leader battle theme, an early Postwick theme, an early wild area theme for the south part of the wild area, unused tracks, and currently another unused track, or just unused track, never mind. Early Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee Route 24 theme, and early Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee Wild Encounter theme. And here's a few other things before we move on. Using the game's performance mode, setting it to the debug menu, the game can run at an uncapped frame rate. The final game is capped at 30 FPS, which is kinda lame, but whatever. I can't notice frame rate, so what do I know? Which means that this debug option can result in an unusually smooth experience. The ability to do this appears to have been removed between this build and the March 2018 build. Imagine if you could just screw around with the game's frame rate, that'd be funny. Our leftover data from the Altar of the Moon can be found in the files at test, whatever that says, background, MDL, battle, _test.gfbmdl. It houses some basic 3DS textures of characters and the environments, Lily being one of them, as well as the model stand-in for Lily, who obviously does not appear in the final game. Alright, here's what it looks like, and this was most likely used as a placeholder or precursor to one of the areas in the game. It is common to do that in game development where you use previous areas from previous games to, stylize areas in future games. I always thought some areas in Sword and Shield look similar to areas from Sun and Moon, like how Rose Tower kind of looks like the Aether Foundation. I can't be the only one who sees that, in some ways. Alright, here's that silhouette of Lily. Alright, by pressing, the player can enter a mode for testing the free camera, seen exclusively in the final game's wild area, though its functionally here allows for more control than in the final. R and ZR are used to zoom in and out, respectively. Something you cannot do in the final game. You can't zoom out the camera, which you can later do in Scarlet and Violet. Alright, here's what that would have looked like. Also, more unfinished houses and trees in the background. Alright, only 54 Pokemon are available in this build. Curiously, some species that didn't make the cut in the end, not appearing even in the expansion pass content, such as Greninja, are present here. My guess is the reason why Greninja got taken out. Now remember in this build, Aurorus and Tyrantrum are also seen, and they later show up in the Crown Tundra DLC, I can't speak, is because they didn't finalize the Delphox line and the Chestnut line. It would be weird to have starter Pokemon, unless you're Charizard, without the other two members, And again, that's coming from a Charizard fan. But anyways, let us go back. Now we're looking at this build, the March 2018 build. Alright, similar things we already seen. Here are some storyboards that I'm going to play them, but I'm not going to put out any sound either. They're relatively long, so I might skip through some of these parts, just to make it faster. Here's what the storyboards look like of certain cutscenes in the game. There's Chairman Rose. I don't know what he's saying. I think I'm just gonna give him some dialogue. Hello, my name is Chairman Rose. Welcome to the world of Pokemon. Look this way. This is a Pokemon, I think. I don't know what he's looking at. Here we go. I'm gonna use this upside-down Pokeball. And a Capraja shows up. In the final game, he shows a Cufin instead. And the Capraja's just looking at him funny. Now, here's another Pokeball. Or whatever. I'll show you the great world of Pokemon. I do not know what he's saying. I'm just putting in dialogue. Alright, fist bump, everybody! I'm fist bumping too, everybody in the chat, fist bump. Alright, and this is where Leon shows up. How he's not covered in soot? I don't know. Alright, this little animation will play. There's Charizard. Or Lizardon, for those of you in Japan. Alright, that's a different symbol than what he has in the final game. Alright, there's a Raihan and Duraludon. Yeah, you're not gonna beat me again, Raihan. Something like that, I don't know. Charizard, Gigantamax, I guess. He Mega Evolved. Plot twist. No, he didn't. Alright, that looks more like just a normal Dynamax Charizard rather than a Gigantamax one, so this was most likely made before that concept was a thing in development. Alright, here's some other storyboards. These other ones I'm gonna speed through a little bit faster. Let's make this a little quicker. I can't tell who's talking to who here. I think, oh no, that's Chairman Rose and Oleano, that's who it is. Oleano looks bored as hell. I don't blame her. Alright, so at the time only the water and grass type gym leaders were refined. Or, well, not refined, but thought of. Alright, ending that one. Here's the part where the gym leaders walk in. And fun fact, actually, before Pokemon Sword and Shield came out, originally the gym leaders were going to be called Gym Masters. I'm kind of glad they changed it back to gym leaders, so Gym Masters would be a pretty sick name, though. Alright, there's my boy Milo. There's Nessa. Actually, I kind of like how she's looking here. Not gonna lie. Kaboo. Yay, cheering, even more. There's Bee. She looking kind of nice as well. There's Opal. And this is most likely the Pokemon Sword version, not the Shield version. There's Gordy. And Raihan. In the final game, Pierce doesn't show up here. And it looks like he still wasn't planned to show up here either. Alright, and that's that one. Let's pause that. Let's look at the Shield version. Alright, we're gonna skip some of this just to make it a bit faster. Alright, and we should see Alistair here. Almost. There he is, with a weird-looking mask. That looks, like, tilted or whatever. Or shifted, I should say. Alright, there's Melanie. Alright, now for another storyboard. Alright, the people in the crowd are cheering. I guess these are the gym challengers. Alright, that's Victor right there. And somebody else, I can't tell who that is. Again, most likely, I think this is the scene of when we first walk into Milo's stadium. It's most likely where this is from. Notice how they're wearing their normal outfits now, not the gym outfits. So most likely that wasn't thought of yet, the gym outfits. Here's Bede. And Marnie should show up as well, I think. Yep, there she is. Looking as stoic, but as adorable as ever. Hey, Victor, what you on about? I don't know what he's saying. Alright, everybody, ready for the gym challenge. Alright, enough of that. Alright, and this is the last storyboard. Alright, Leon and Raihan standing off. Alright, Leon, I'm gonna beat your ass today. No, you will not, Raihan. Oh, is that so? Just giving them some dialogue again. It's fun. You guys should try it. Anyways, that's the last storyboard. Now let's look at some early maps. Alright, now here are the ones from the March 2018 build. Notice how we have a bit of a different bridge over here now. And Pidgeot in the background, a Pokemon that doesn't show up in the final game. And both Blastoise in the water for some reason with weird looking red eyes. And Aerodactyl, two Pokemon that only show up in the later DLCs. Alright, we already looked at that picture earlier. Alright, there's the Tyrants in the background, we've seen that. Alright, here's the March 2018 build. It's a little closer to the final version, yet some of the textures are still very clearly unfinished. And Vanillix, a Pokemon that does show up in the final game. In the base game even, not even the DLC. And you guys know me, Vanillix is one of my favorite Gen 5 Pokemon. Yes, fight me. But anyways. Alright, here's the March 2018 build, which, honestly, with it just being a gray floor, my small guess is this is an early version of Hammerlock Stadium, maybe? Where we were supposed to fight Eternatus? But I don't know, that's a stretch. Alright, there's an early version of, I want to say Route 1, I think. I think this is an early version of Route 1. Yeah, it is. Alright, these are some pictures we've seen earlier. Alright, here's a more not stylized, but definitely a closer version to what we see of the Pokemon Center. Alright, here's a closer version of the train station. Inside the train station, now this time, they got tickets, and service is still spelled wrong. Alright, Route 2, mostly unfinished, as you can see. The grass is literally just a bunch of squares that you can walk through. And here again with the Wycom prototype. And here's another version of Route 2. And Sonia's house down here. Alright, early version of the Professor's house. Alright, more early versions of either the player's house or Hop and Leon's house. Alright, here's what that looks like. Alright, and here's some other Pokemon, and more Pokemon that don't show up in the final game, notably Beedrill, Furfrou, Ekans, and Arbok, while Aerodactyl and Aurorus don't show up till Crown Tundra. And again, very much more unfinished fields and stuff. Here's another pic. And another picture, and hey look! It's my boy, Stakataka! Y'all know I love Stakataka. Look at him in his pride and glory. A Pokemon that doesn't show up until the Crown Tundra DLC. Also name that It's My Boy reference. Hint, it's another Poketuber. Alright, here's another build. It looks like there's some sort of body of water in the background. I want to say this is an early wild area. Alright, here looks like an early version of Turffield. Or Wedgehurst, actually. An early version of Milo Stadium. Or Motostoke entrance, apparently. Alright, now here's a 2018 build of Motostoke that's a little closer to the vinyl version, but without all the shading and whatnot, and some of the textures still look unfinished, like that Pokeball in the background. So that tells me the gym symbol that later is used in the final game wasn't thought of just yet. Alright, Motostoke is almost fully textured and has the same layout as the final, but it lacks NPCs and decorations. Certain map objects, like the shipping containers, lack textures. Additionally, there is no smoke coming from the vents in the ground, as you can see right over here. And then there's no smoke there. And the wheels do not turn in this build. The animations for them likely wasn't made yet, but here's what it looks like. Honestly, kind of looks like one of those 2000s MMO games, not gonna lie. And that should tell you that Sword and Shield definitely looks a bit outdated, even when it's closer to what it ends up looking like later on. Alright, here's another one. This little secret area in Motostoke. There are no shops in the main area, only glass where the shops would eventually be placed. There are also no animations when riding on the elevators, just to warp the player to the top bottom when approached. I mean, even though those elevators had guardrails, I always thought they were a little dangerous if you saw the animation and how fast you get swooped up there, but whatevs. Alright, uniform outfits. The exterior of the uniform shop is largely unfinished, with no textures or defining features. Here's what it looks like. Just a square with an orange door, I guess. Alright, the interior has a similar layout to the final, but isn't textured. The trophy stand and door in the back are removed in the final game, instead placed by two shelves holding stacks of shirts. Alright, here's what that looks like. And you see the trophies in the background. Alright, the station. Alright, the exterior of the train station is completely different from the final. In this build, it was a glass building. I almost said a grass building. And was completely see-through. It was likely changed to match the design of the interior. Alright, here's what it looks like. It's not exactly see-through, there's no windows. Alright, the interior is largely unfinished. It is completely untextured and has placeholder text and models. The entrance on the right functions when walked into, but the player is always warped to the upper entrance. Alright, here's what this looks like. And you got completely unmodeled NPCs over here T-posing. That's totally polished. It's a pre-build of the game, obviously, but still. And here's another room of it. Alright, Badoo Drop-In. The Badoo Drop-In is largely unfinished. The exterior has no textures, and though it is possible to enter the building, the player spawns out of bounds and can't enter the main area. The interior is untextured as well, and the statue of the hero in the middle of the entrance area is just a generic shape. Here's what that looks like. A generic shape, an ellipse or something. I think that's what it's called. Alright, Motostoke Stadium. The Motostoke Stadium is largely unfinished when compared to the final version. Here's what that looks like, again before the gym symbol is added. Here's what the inside of it looks like. With a statue that slightly resembles a really pixelated Snorlax. Alright, and here's the 2017 build of the gym again. Here's the March 2018 build. It looks a little different, but still very unpolished. Route 3. Route 3 is largely the same as in the final version, but it has different lighting and camera angles. The notable difference includes the lack of overworld Pokemon and route signs, and a more detailed Motostoke wall. Additionally, there is no tent near the entrance to Galar Mines, despite there being an area for one. Since Galar Mine does not exist in this build, this entrance instead warps the player directly to Route 4. Alright, here's what that looks like. Weirdly enough, the wall texture actually looks kind of nice here. I don't know. I like it. This looks better than what we got in the final version. This looks a little musty, if you will. Alright, here's another part of Route 3. And you see Galar Mines in the background, or at least a pre-build for it. And here's another part of it. Alright, Route 4. Like with Route 3, Route 4 is almost fully textured, but lacks the lighting and camera angles of the final. The layout is somewhat different, particularly with the area near Galar Mines. Unlike Route 3, there is a tent near the Galar Mine entrance, but it lacks collision and can't be interacted with. To the right of the tent there is a red and yellow oblong object, but it lacks textures and interactability as well, this weird blimp-looking thing. In the final game, there is a berry tree in its place, so it's most likely just a placeholder for that berry tree. Here's what it looks like. And Turffield Stadium looks absolutely disgusting, compared to literally everything else that looks less disgusting. Alright, and here's another part of Route 4. With something that I want to say Street Walk in the background. I can't tell what that says, it's a little hard to see. The stones around the map lack the runes, moss, and shape that those in the final game have. Alright, here's what they look like. Alright, Turffield has mostly the finished textures, but still has placeholders from non-terrain objects, like signs and fencing, as well as most buildings. Here's what that looks like. And here's another part of it. Alright, there's no path to the right of the Pokemon Center, when in the final game there is, so that most likely just wasn't made yet. Alright, Turffield Stadium. The exterior has the same general shape as the final, and the game and round rectangle resemble the pattern seen in the final game as well. There are no textures, and the building lacks any grass-type logo. There is only a barricade to be left, and the player is free to walk to the right of the stadium, as you can see right here. So maybe initially you're going to enter from the back, perhaps? That might have been what was initially planned. Alright, the inside has the game's layout as the final, but there are no textures or NPCs, as you can see right here. Not even ball guys here, man. Alright, the gym challenge room is completely unfinished, lacking any textures or models. Here's what it looks like. A weird checkerboard floor. The combat area itself is nearly identical to the final version. It includes smoke effects, spotlights, and moving crowds, and finalized gym logo, various advertisements, and a properly textured field floor. The player spawns in at one of the commemoratory booths, whatever, not at either of the combatants' entryways, like in the final. This location is used for all battles in this build, as you can see here. And I guess this was most likely used to test certain, story battles and animations and whatnot. Although the area is properly textured, it is possible to see some mesh vertices, or vertexes, in some areas, as you can see here. Alright, geoglyphs. The area with the geoglyph depicting a G-Max Pokemon, and people theorize it's G-Max Toxtricity, is nearly identical to the final, but has different camera angles, as you can see here. Alright, an early version of this thing, with Sojourner and Greedent. Alright, Route 5. Route 5 is mostly textured, but there are some lighting and camera differences. The grass along the side of his hill was turned to a cliff in the final game, as you can see here. Honestly, yeah, this looks slightly better, I guess, than this just normal grass hill. It looks like you can still run up. Alright, like with Route 4, there is a campground with no collision, as well as a red and yellow object, a placeholder for a tree. In the final version, we're a berry tree in this object's location. The pond has collision and can be walked on. The pond over here almost looks frozen over a bit. I know it's just the coloring, but still. And again, T-posing NPC over here. Alright, the bridge leading to Hulberry and the wild area beneath it are not textured, and a bridge cannot be worked on. When the player tried to walk on the bridge, there are warps directed to the entrance of Hulberry, as you can see here. Since the animations for the bridge had not been created yet, they just warp it over there. It makes sense, honestly, from an early build standpoint. Imagine that crap in the final game, though. Oh boy! Anyways, daycare. The exterior of the daycare is unfinished with a sign above the entryway that says, which translates to egg. Egg in Japanese. I don't know how to say that, and I'm not going to try to say it. The interior seems to be a replica of the daycare from the Alola region, most likely just as a little building block test holder of it, as you can see what it looks like in the Gen 7 games. So the design definitely is clearly based on that. Alright, Motostoke Outskirts. Motostoke Outskirts has a similar layout to the final game, though there are no textures or finalized models, and there is no bridge between Motostoke and the Outskirts. Galar Mine number 2 doesn't exist in this build, so the entrance on the right inside directly warps the player to Hulberry. Alright, and here's what that looks like. And here's another one. And this Pokemon, well, not Pokemon, but a Pokeball prop that somewhat resembles a Voltorb, but not entirely. Maybe Voltorb was originally planned to be in this game as well, but it wasn't. Alright, Hulberry. Largely resembles its final version, but some buildings and textures and the camera angles and lightings are vastly different. None of the houses can be entered in. And weirdly enough, Hulberry Stadium in the background looks very unfinished. A little weird and, oddly enough, realistic looking too. Same with the ground. Look at the floor. Concrete that isn't shown in the final game. Or at least not entirely shown in the final game, but it looks less like concrete, if you know what I mean. Alright, that weird circle thing isn't here in the final version. The water looks massively untextured. The lighthouse back there looks a little weird. It honestly gives off a really realistic-ish look. I don't know. And it doesn't exactly fit the Pokemon franchise, at least not right now. Alright, the marketplace to the south is almost identical to the final version. The grass in the middle has been cut in the final version. Alright, here's what that looks like. Kind of looks like Slateport from the Hoenn region. At least that's what I think it looks like. Alright, here's what that looks like in the final version. I mean, at least we're finding some builds that aren't just a bunch of polygons, at least at some points. Alright, the lighthouse area has untextured benches and lack correct collision. There's also no Toxtricity statue, though there seems to be an area for it, so it was planned for later on. Alright, here's what that looks like. And Gloria's legs going through the bench. That's not nightmare fuel at all. Imagine your legs going through a bench. Alright, the train station is unfinished as well, lacking the textures or shape of the final. The interior is identical to one in Postwick. The statue, or station, does not warp the player anywhere. Here's what that looks like. And notice how the colors are a bit more muted out compared to the final version. The exterior of this restaurant has no textures or details. Here's what it looks like. Alright, the inside is untextured as well, but there are some early models and placeholder NPCs, and here's what that looks like. And this is most likely the dining hall where we meet up with Chairman Rose and Oleana for the first time after beating Nessa. Alright, Hulberry Stadium. The exterior of Hulberry Stadium resembles the final version, but there are no textures. The road leading up to the stadium has arrows pointing to it. Alright, here's what that looks like. It looks, like I mentioned before, weirdly realistic in some parts. Kind of glad they didn't do that. Alright, the inside is identical to the stadium and turf field. Here's what that looks like. They probably just copy and pasted it for testing reasons. There's an early layout of the gym challenge room, complete with placeholder NPCs. Water locations are and buttons. Nothing can be interacted with. An early version of the Holberry Gym. Again, without your gym outfit on. Alright, a combat area itself does not exist. It's only a skybox with a gray floor, might I add. And another little wireframe of Gloria floating above her that's slightly larger than her as well, which is a little creepy, almost making it look like her soul's jumping out of her body. And the lack of detail. I know I almost said Gloria, excuse me. Anyways, let's look at the debug mode. Alright, these are just files you can put into the game. Debug menu, which every game has. Alright, field. When this option is selected, the player's last save file is loaded, most likely as a save state of some sorts. This is a way for the user to test out various battle mechanics, as you can see in the codes over here. Alright, Battle Viewer raids. Most likely is a way to test out Dynamax raids. Alright, select this option and place the player in a raid battle. All trainers use the player models. By default, the trainers all use Marowak as a placeholder. Again, a Pokemon that doesn't show up until the Isle of Armor DLC. And the raid boss is a Tyrant, as you can see over here. A Pokemon that doesn't show up until the Contundra DLC. And opposed to Gloria striking that she doesn't normally strike in the final game. At least not that I recognize. Alright, Battle Viewer Signal. A single. Selects this option, places the player in a raid battle. Both players use the player's models. By default, the trainers all use Marowak as before, and this is what it looks like. And Gloria in that weird pose again. And Marowak with some weird demon eyes. That is creepy. And now here's a double battle version of it. Same thing. Here's what it looks like. Again, just as a way to test out single and double battles. Arzumi battle. Select this results in an error screen because it has nothing behind it. That's why. Sequence test. Nothing happens when this is selected. And BG test or background music test most likely, or not background music, but most likely test for the background. Selecting this option in an error code. Wide road. Alright, selecting wide road number 1 allows the player's last save as a save state. Just testing saves most likely. Choosing either road 2 or wide road 3 places the player in an empty area, most likely this one you see over here. Alright, the Chara select or character select most likely. This option brings up a menu to view character models, but nothing shows up on the screen other than the models itself, or the menus, I mean. As you can see here, most likely a way to test out certain NPCs and whatnot. Alright, debug battle. This option crashes the game. Alright, Chara view. Choosing this option displays an error screen or error code and crashes the game. Most likely to view the character's models, but it was never fully finished. The demo player. This menu allows the user to view animation sequences. EV0050_get. This is the only option that actually functions when selected. Choosing any of the following options will crash the game. Any of these options. Alright, the UKit, however you pronounce that. This mode allows the user to test various UI functions. Alright, field viewers. Choose this will place the player character in an empty room. We saw that earlier. There's a window showing the player's current XYZ coordinates. And our instructions at the top of the screen that says, whatever that says. Presses any of the D-pad directions, moves the camera in that direction. This feature seems unique to this mode. Pressing, holding ZL and ZR does all that. Or doesn't seem to do anything, according to that. Or we already saw that earlier. Oh no. Why did they put it as oh no? Whatever. Choosing this brings up a second screen of the debug options, but none seems to do anything. This menu is likely named after programmer Katsumi Oh no. Oh no indeed. Alright, like with the oh no menu, choosing this brings up a second screen of debug options. This menu may be named after battle system, a programmer, Toshihiro Obata. The Igumi test option is the only one that loads anything. All other options bring the user to a blank screen. Choosing Igumi test brings up a new window, allowing the user to oh my god, again with this garbage. Anyways, the user to test various functions like input boxes, selectable options, buttons, and sliders. Here's what that looks like. And here's more of this. So they might most likely just used each other's names as like placeholder text for these codes, most likely. This menu allows users to access an early version of the Pokemon Camp. It is likely named after Pokemon Camp's programmer Junya Ikuta. And here's what that looks like. Alright, Beacon. Both of the options in this menu only load a blank screen. These ones over here. Alright, Muto. This menu allows users to test a few UI features. It is likely named after UI system programmer Yu Muto, or Moto, whatever. Hell, like Yugi Moto, let me stop. UI, or Battle UI loads, a blank screen. UI Manager test briefly loads the Rotom minimap, as you see here, in the bottom left right-hand corner, but then loads a blank screen. Alright, RF UI test permanently loads the Rotom minimap into the bottom right corner and leaves it on screen. The user can move the map by moving the left analog stick. Pressing the A button will display a sticker on the top left of the screen. From a player is named, whatever this is, there's no name placed here, it's just some not parentheses but quotations. Pressing the quotation L quotation button will get rid of the sticker, and it can't be called back on screen. The D-pad can also be used to use stickers, just like in the regular field gameplay. Alright, here's what that looks like, just a gray screen with those textures on it. And here's what that looks like, so they can call those elements. A report test displays a screen with numbers 0 through 11, but the user isn't able to do anything, as you can see here. Alright. The menu allows users to test a few UI features. It's likely named after UI programmer Akio Sanga. Here's what some of those look like. I'll just leave them over here for everyone to read. Just pause the screen if you need to. Alright, and that's the end of this segment. Alright, and there's still the build of the May 2015 build, or 2018 build. We could look at this real fast. Alright, the player's house in Postwick. Alright, the player's house is actually textured in this build when compared to previous ones. Your room looks drastically different when compared to the final version. However, additionally, the Pikachu and Eevee posters are significantly different both in their placement and in actual visuals, with Eevee in particular becoming far more refined in the final version. Though, they're also taped on the walls, whereas this isn't the case here. The poster on the left wall appears to be a rough paint job of the real-life London Tower Bridge. As you can see right over here, it almost looks like a code of some sort, or like a 3D model of something in like Unreal Engine. Alright, the camera and lighting is also significantly different. Interestingly, the build depicted in the February 2019 reveal trailer, when the game was actually announced, for the game appears to maintain the placement of Pikachu and Eevee poster of the prototype, suggesting that it was changed at some point thereafter. I want to tell you something. I remember watching that trailer in the middle of my Spanish class back in my junior year of high school. I do quite remember that quite a bit. Heck, I remember my Spanish teacher telling me to put my phone away, but I didn't. Anyways, that was like, at the time of making this video, 5 years ago, which is crazy, but yeah. Here's the March build of Gloria's room, with the switch in the background we saw earlier. And here's the May build, which actually I kind of like this more than what we got in the final game. One weird thing about this picture though, why is Gloria purple? She looks like that, like, y'all remember Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory? She reminds me of that one girl that got turned into a blueberry. That's what that looks like. And Pikachu with demon eyes. Whatever. And here's what the rooms look like in the final version. And here are some of the prototype photos. A closer look at that London Bridge, as I mentioned earlier. It looks like an early version of Galar's map, an early Pikachu tail poster, and an early Pikachu poster, with, again, the demon eyes. Here's what they look like in the final version, being replaced by a Ferris wheel, still that rough design of Galar's map, an Eevee tail instead of a Pikachu tail, and Pikachu no longer has demon eyes. And here again, demon-eyed Eevee this time, and these were pictures or whatever. And here's what that looks like in the final version. This one kind of looked like a precursor to the League cards, it looks like. Alright. Alright, so that out of the way. There's still quite a bit of details we have to look at in a later video. We're going to make a part 2 of this because this is going on for quite a bit. So if y'all enjoyed this and you learned something new, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and whatnot. And as our question of the day, of all the things we've seen, which one did you want to see in the final version of the game? And we'll be back real quick with a part 2 as well. So thank you all for watching. Have a berrific day.